2024. We ready? Good, good, thanks. Okay, receive any comments from the public tonight? Anyone here, Shelley? No. Okay, thank you. And then any adjustments? Jeannie? Nothing from you? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, yes. Oh, absolutely, please.
I should have done it earlier. I was gonna say, I was telling Mike, the system actually works. I signed up for the alerts and I got the notice that my water usage was kind of high and I panicked and I thought, oh, I have to do something. So I called and spoke with John Geiger and immediately he figured out what it was and that was it. So it actually does work.
Yes, it does. Good. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm.
Okay, we've got a really long consent agenda. It's almost as long as the whole agenda. So we can entertain a motion to accept and then probably discuss some things. I know I have some comments. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Any discussion on the agenda? There's a lot here.
The smart meter, that's part of the regular agenda, right? I have some questions on that. It's not,
No, it's number 11,
okay.
right? The application for the smart meter.
Yeah, so, I had questions on that because the way it was written, it like talks about of in-depth understanding. of it.
Exactly. I had the same. Let's just wait till let's go down consent agenda because I have some items. And if anyone else does,
That is an application to renew every year through Association of Water Board of Directors in their Water Smart program. Has
Yeah.
nothing to do-
Okay, I just don't know what it is,
Yep.
so I can't vote yes if I don't. I
yeah,
have no idea what that is all about, so would like an update.
Yeah.
Take that on the consent agenda to the regular.
yeah. And I saw the same thing. I mean, it says that we have a detailed understanding of this application, and I think we don't. I would like to. Either you strike that or just say, I don't think there's any, I guess maybe one of my questions, we'll go to that, Eric. What does applying or being part of that smart meter program do? Maybe you could help us understand. I know why the smart meters are important. We love them. They're working, and that was just an example of it that Cynthia shared us. But what is being part of the AWBD
nothing to do with
Program.
Meters.
smart meter program though? What
Nothing to do with Smart meters.
Hmm.
Reread it.
Despite the name.
smart meter water smart
There
application?
you go. Water Smart. It's a program through Association of Water Board Directors for municipalities that have meet the criteria and are going to commit to being good stewards of water conservation, among other
And
things.
the Woodlands MUDs, as I recall, have really been leaders in that for years, especially with the implementation of the defined irrigation program that required folks to irrigate no more than twice a week. That was really tip of the spear in the mud community. You've had some municipalities that have done that, but in the mud community, it was very much on the forefront of water conservation for an entire community of MUDs to implement that on a mandatory basis. And so I think that got, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, got the districts a lot of recognition. Jim worked on it.
It did. We won a Blue Legacy Award. We won
Yeah.
several awards from them. We've been a member of the Water Smarts program since 2005. I actually wrote them a letter 5 years ago to ask that we be considered as a legacy member. We didn't get a reply. But a lot of people have copied ours. A lot of mud districts across the state with the Wise Guy irrigation inspection program, the defined irrigation schedule, just a lot of stuff. All our articles, a lot of people copy our articles, a lot of my districts use our articles. They're better on it. Just a lot of stuff.
Are we gonna
I
talk
thought
about
was
this?
more to legacy membership, but we did not do.
Are we gonna talk about this at the regular meeting, like in a little bit after the consent, or is now?
We're here. Let's just talk
Okay.
about it.
Yeah.
Submittal package, get the resolution to sign by you all, and then submit bill stuffers, whatever we've done throughout the year, all the, photographs that John Geiger takes at the, Earth Day and some of the other events that he holds, just to show us how we're involved in conservation, being good stewards of the water smart meters, the AMI meters, those are tracking more of our water usage, not so much waste, more reliable, more accurate, more conservative. We did put together this package every year for the water smart, so we did.
Because at the
Package for the entire.
Corpus Christi meeting, they recognized us for being leaders in conservation at the luncheon. And I'm thinking that this whole thing is more about, yeah, Corpus Christi, yeah.
I don't think anyone has any problem with the application. I think with this, the language in here, and I thought the same thing. The board has discussed and reviewed the district's application in its entirety and has confirmed the inclusion of all necessary documentation. Now, that's where Garrett's going. He's like, he's on the board, I'm on the board, we're attesting to that. If it said the board and its agent, which would be what does water has done all that, I'm fine with it. That's the hang up, I think, right?
Yeah.
It's not the program and
Yeah,
being part of it. It's just,
Yeah, is the resolution, is it required to be part of the program, like this resolution that,
It is part of the submit. It's part of the submit.
and what do we get in return besides,
You get
Goodwill,
recognition at
recognition.
luncheon. Yeah, you
Okay.
get recognition at the luncheon, you get published in the AWBD Journal as a Water Smart partner. There is no cost to you except for my time to put it together.
It's more like public relations than anything
Yeah,
else.
just get signed and what.
I don't object to it, I just wanted
To
to
know what it is.
know what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
Question about number 8 on the delinquency, and hiring an attorney. Since I'm new, what has been done in the past?
So we have a standing engagement with the tax collections attorney firm. They are compensated pursuant to the tax code that is a contingent fee based on their collections, where it's 20%, if I'm not mistaken. And so, which is authorized under the tax code. The resolution, and we do 2 of these resolutions in year, one for personal property, one for real property. The reason the resolution is separated is because the tax code allows for districts to pass on the fee that it pays to the delinquent tax collections attorney to the delinquent taxpayer beginning on April 1st for personal property, but you can't pass it on to real property delinquent taxpayers until July 1st. So we have this resolution in January. We'll have a similar resolution in, I think it's March or so. We have to do it every year because of the separate levy and the taxes, the penalty it attaches or is related to that particular levy. So you'll see these every single year. That's why it's on a consent agenda. With y'all being new directors, it's good questions. But that's the purpose. So that way the district doesn't take a 20% haircut when we collect. We also instruct the delinquent tax attorney, don't start collection activity on day 1 of delinquency on, say, February 1st, because if they collect between February 1st and April 1st, or between February 1st and July 1st, then we still take the haircut. So we say, don't start the collection activity until the additional penalty kicks in so that the district's made whole.
Got it. I used to do this every year. I remember doing this last year, I think. Exact same thing.
Same thing. Those are the only types of items that I would typically put on a
Yeah.
consent agenda, is if it's recurring, what I'll call administrative and housekeeping
Yeah,
items.
yes, fair enough. Does anyone have, I got a couple, anyone else have anything? About that. Maureen, on page 17, I look at the tax collections. I think I asked this question last year, actually. It looks like page 17. Looks like tax collections. That's a summary of what you've collected so far. So the top of page 17. It says 2023 tax roll, percent collected 57.77. See that? Jeannie, I'm sorry.
That's where you are as the December.
And right below that percent collected, is that this for the same period last year? So is it fair to say collections are ahead of where they almost double than where they were? Is any idea why, or is that just?
and we didn't get their payment until January. And we got all of them in December this year. So that's
Like
why.
escrow folks who do
Yeah,
that. I
that's
see,
right.
I see. Okay, okay, all right, good. Okay, that's that question. On page, is it page 25? No, that's still part of the consent.
On page 19, or consent agenda number 8. This sounds like it's an increase in additional penalty. Would that be, since it's something new or it's a change, does that belong in the consent agenda, or should that be under the agenda? It just,
So we put it on the consent agenda because it's considered each year.
Okay.
But it's an additional penalty over and above the regular penalties and interest
Okay.
that accrue starting on February.
so nothing new. Just
Correct.
yeah.
Renew it.
Additional over and above the regular penalties and interest that accrue.
What is 12? What is item 12? Consider an act on approving attendance and expenses for district and/or Woodlands Water trustee business.
So this is the standing item for approval on any per diems for attendance at, either meetings or conferences or what have you.
Is it really?
Every single month.
And, sorry.
No, I mean, if there's a director that decides that they want to go to this conference or
Yeah,
that
yeah.
conference or has some, whatever, that wouldn't be the normal course, then that item is to cover that, if those things come up.
So whether there are or not, we approve this every month.
Every month it's on there. Just in case there are those things.
Okay. Any other discussion on the consent agenda? Do y'all have, I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I still have a it's the way it's written on that Water Smart application. I mean, if I have to sign off on it, that I understand in detail, I should just at least look at what agreement or what commitments we've done. So, that's just me. Just the way it's written.
So, I think who signs this is, myself.
I know,
and-
but not sign it,
as secretary.
If I sign off on it, be like by voting.
Yeah,
that
yeah, I understand.
um,
So what would you like to
Just
look at the
Just
application?
to have access to
Can we,
whatever that is. I mean, I should.
Isn't that was page 24?
assume there's an application that's associated with it, right?
Is there anything else in?
How about if we,
But, yeah. I had to prepare. Like an authorization to do.
can we,
It's due before your next meeting, that's the problem.
can we approve with,
But we can
condition?
normally post it, right, on the drive. But we can.
You can.
Yeah. We can.
Can we approve, contingent upon seeing the application, so we don't have to come back and do this again? We do this all the time,
Yeah,
or
I
abstain.
think it's abstain if you feel more comfortable, if you all are comfortable.
and then get a copy to you of the application when it's
Yeah.
filed, so that way you're educated in the future. Yeah.
If you could put it on the Google Drive, I think then we'd all see it and we're all squared away, but I don't see any need to hold it up at this point. And seeing that would be fine, I think. Okay, we'll rely on this conversation to get us there. Okay. Okay, so I think that takes care of the consent agenda. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Abstain? Aye. Okay. Thank you very much. Approved. Good job, everyone. Okay, on the regular agenda, we move to item 13. Review and consider approval of district's fiscal year draft audit report, which was on the Google Drive. Yeah, how you doing?
Look at it, but, and you know what, we have a couple of new board members. If you'd like, I could maybe talk about the general section.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. first page 1 and 2 is our opinion. That's what we're really paying us for, and it's an unqualified opinion, and which is what you want. And it's long, but it's clean. Pages 3 to 8, all of them have this discussion and analysis, and you and I have had a discussion on that, and probably be talking about a little more on the WWA, but this is where we have the opportunity. This is kind of the free form area of this report where there's things that y'all want to highlight or discuss to any reader of this report. This is where we put it. It's a good tool.
Would you mind just expanding on our conversation at the trustee meeting? Just share with them what we talked about and what the plan is. Please.
We had this discussion about the fact that our audit, while it is a financial audit, we have to spend a good portion of our audit time evaluating the internal controls of the district. So we have an understanding of them so that we can then develop procedures to audit the numbers. And we don't form an opinion on your internal controls, but we do evaluate them, and we have exhaustive checklists that we have to go through to make sure we've got it all covered, and so forth and so on. Hugh's concern was that we never address the work that we do on your internal controls. We never say they're good, never say they're bad. We do issue a management letter. We do issue a information letter to the district related to these tests, but in this report, you don't see any other. What we were doing in the WWA report, or proposing to do, and we're going to discuss it a little more tomorrow, is including in the MD&A some discussion about what we do regarding internal controls and if we had any deficiencies and so forth related to that, which you don't see in here otherwise. And so we're working on that, and we can certainly add it to 47's report as well. I mean, it's something we can discuss. And before I go any further, we've got a couple of weeks before we need to finalize this report, and it's due to the TCEQ mid-February. So we usually try and finalize this report in early February. And so if you are reading through this and you see a misspelled name or whatever, or have some concerns, or we want to add some comment in the MD&A, we've got time to do that. And so we don't feel like you have to, and we'll ask for your approval subject to any changes the board or the attorney has, as long as they're not material, of course. So just to keep that in mind, so you have time to read it, and just call me up, call Marina up, call Brian up, and just let them know, hey, I want this changed in the report. And assuming it's not material, we'll make the changes and get it through. If it is material, we'll want to come back to the board with it. But so the MD&A, that's what we were talking about, maybe expanding a little bit. If y'all decide you want to, we can certainly do that. And right now, it's just a kind of a boilerplate mud, one size fits all kind of MD&A. That's what we've done in the past, but we can certainly expand.
We saw this at the trustee meeting last week. Because it's a trustee audit, and then there's an individual mud audits, right? And so knowing we were going to come into here, it made sense to chat about this again. I think there was some interest at the trustee level to see something in there that would be kind of the agency's representation, that they know they have controls, and as far as they know, they're working, and you're kind of documenting that and acknowledging that. Control, like who has the right to write a check, authorize a check, and actually, disperse one, and disperse funds, things like that are just basic control.
We're kind of careful in our wording, just because we have to make sure everybody understands that we're not doing an internal control audit, that we are doing a financial audit. But as part of that, we spend a fair amount of time, more than a fair amount of time, on your internal controls to understand it. Pages 10 through 13 are your financial statements, and I'll just briefly state that the first 3 columns that you see on both pages are the numbers that you see every month from Maureen in the accounting department. And by the way, they did a great job this year. and it made our job really easy. And then we have to, and we've been doing this for the last 18 or not so years, we have to convert it into a different form, more of a business type presentation. And so that's what happens on these reports. A whole lot of numbers, but I think I think the board thinks on the first three columns, you know, how they're running the district, and it makes more sense to me too. And we'll have the notes to the financial statements, which are all required and so forth. On page 34, your budget to actual comparison, what do they call required supplementary information? And it's included in the report. And then 36 through 47 are what the TCEQ, what we call it, Texas supplementary information, and it's TCEQ required information within the report. And those are the major sections. Every district in the state of Texas issues, or every municipal district in the state of Texas issues the same exact report. So it's a very kind of a compliance report. Important to understand, but again, we have opportunities in the MD&A if there's anything that the board would like. Question?
Questions on the report?
Do you ever produce like a scorecard of on the internal controls?
We issue two reports. One is if we had any disagreements with management, if we had any material issues, and so we issue that. And I don't think there's anything we report on that for your district. The second one we do is an internal control letter where if we see any deficiencies or material weaknesses, we'll report it on that letter. In the case of the district and the WWA, and this sounds really odd, but we have to report as a material weakness your reliance on us preparing the report, believe it or not. Because we prepare the report, that's an independence issue, therefore it's a material weakness. But every district, with the exception of the district that I serve on, gets the same letter because they just don't have a MUD CPA on their board to prepare, and you don't have the in-house MUD CPA. So.
And that's that second point is the MDA. That's where all of those notes would be.
Yes, and so what we're proposing in the WWA, and we'll propose for 47 if that's what y'all prefer, is that we discuss what the kind of the work that we do on the internal controls and why we're doing it, and then we'll make mention that there was only one material weakness, and it's because of the district's reliance on us preparing the financial statements, and there were no other deficiencies found. So that's where you get your opportunity to.
I think whatever you do at the trustee level, whatever verbiage you kind of come up with, I think would be happy to see it here in this audit as well.
Okay. Can do that. Yeah. We've got a draft. I think Maureen was going to post it out there. There is a draft of the verbiage. If anybody would like
Oh, is
to,
there?
yeah, for the WWA, and if anybody has any issues with it, then we can certainly make amendments.
Okay.
47 as well.
Where is that, Maureen?
By the revised.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it only goes to the trustees or it is.
Yeah, because that's the one we were.
Right.
So it's under the water folder in the Google Drive.
Just trustees have access to that.
That's-
Right, yeah, just the WWA support.
Okay. So you can drop a copy of that into ours as well. I mean, for our audit, right? Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, you can look at the.
I'll take a look at, yeah. Okay.
And if you have any issues, please let me know and we can amend it.
Any other questions on the audit? Do I have a motion to approve the draft audit? Okay, a second,
Second.
okay. So we're gonna approve. Aye.
Aye.
You don't object? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item 14, receive report regarding proposed amendments to the Montgomery County Appraisal District's budget in connection with the new election process for MCAD Board of Directors, pages 25 and 33. Yeah. Good.
I always put in every year what your payments are gonna be quarterly to the appraisal district for all the appraisals and, you know, the work that they do. Repay. Okay, it's almost $12,000. At the time they did that, they didn't have, there's gonna be a supplemental budget because Senate Bill 2 changed the election for the board of directors that we just went through the process, Arthur being one of the elected or appointed directors. Senate Bill 2 changed and now it's gonna be a 9-member board instead of a 5-member board. Out of that 9 members, 3 are going to be elected officials. The appraisal district is handling all of that. It's under their control. In addition to that, because they weren't aware of what this budget was gonna be, like your elections, we go through the county and we use them. They're also going to use the county. It's a $350,000 estimate for all the jurisdictions to use. And your portion will be a little over $1,000 a quarter. If they don't use the full 350, then you'll get a credit on your 4th quarter payment. Okay, Arthur is going to go through the rest of it, the rest of the process and how it's done.
Mr. President, board members, thanks for the opportunity to be here. First of all, I want to thank you for the support during the election. I was able to get elected for term 24 and 25, so appreciate that support. Senate Bill 2 changed the composition of coming back to you guys for a supplemental budget. So we'll take a step back. In June of 23, we prepared a draft main budget for MCAD that we shared with all the taxing units. At that time, we had no cost of what Senate Bill 2 would do to the CADs and to our taxing units. When we approved the final budget in September, the numbers were still not aware what our responsibility would be. So then Senate Bill 2 mandates that the appraisal districts must run an election for 3 seats that are residential seats. Today's board is a 6-member board. It's 5 elected by all the taxing units, plus statutorily, the county tax assessor collector is a member of the board by statute. So that's your 6-member board today. Come May, there will be 3 seats open for residents to run. Those 3 would get elected, and in July, those 3 additional members would be seated with the board, and that's your composition for 9 members. So it's going to be our first election. Just like here at the MUD districts, running a separate election becomes more cumbersome, more expensive, and has a lot more requirements, as Brian has shared with all of us as MUD directors. So we took a position, we're going to sign a contract by the end of January with the county election office to run the election. So Sue Harvey has met with the chief appraiser on a number of meetings since we know what the cost is. They worked out the cost and it's estimated at $350,000. That's our portion to be part of the county election process. As Jeannie well stated, should that be less than $350,000, we'll provide a credit back to each taxing units for the 4th quarter payment. So that's what we've agreed to, and we think it's a good way going forward. We don't appreciate coming back to our taxing units with additional supplemental, just like none of us appreciate getting a surprise bill once you have an annual budget. But we have no taxing authority to raise this money. We have no fee authority to charge anybody. So we had to come back to our taxing units. But we had a meeting with Senator Creighton on Monday to make him aware that we have a mandated obligation unfunded. It's not really that appreciated. So he wants us to give the final numbers. We hope that he's going to help work with us. But he also advised us that the governor's office supposedly has some budgetary money for elections. We don't know what that means. We just found out Monday, so we will investigate that. We're not sure that we'll be able to return any compensation back to the appraisal district, But if it did, then those credits will go back to the taxpayers. So more to come on that. I'm probably not that hopeful that there really will be money. There could be a lot of requirements on what that budgetary reserve is that the governor's office has. But we wanted to come here today to kind of report out of what has taken place, as this district is very important to us as one of our customers. Then a question came up. So if you want to run, what do you do? Well, the county will review the application according to all the standards. There's a $400 filing fee that goes along with the application. And then the filing deadline is, I think, January 17th through February 16th. So it's a very tight filing time. And Brian, I think that's the same as mud directors, right? And it'll be a packet that they will get, and they have to fill out the packet, kind of similar to what a person would want to run for either re-election as a mud director or as a potential mud director. And that's kind of a summary report, but we wanted to come back in person to provide that. Even though there's a letter and there's a packet, we felt it would be good to come back and see you guys spend some time together.
Thank you.
Appreciate the backstory. Yeah, it's very helpful. Yeah, thank you, Arthur. Just the Janet Doyle letter. Thank you.
Here tonight because of weather and, with the roads, where she comes from.
Sure.
That's what, so she wanted to apologize.
No, understand. Any other questions? Okay, I think that's good. We have nothing to do on that. Item 15, grant exemptions from taxation for 2024 and the adoption of the resolution in connection therewith,
Yes.
pages 34 and 35 on our agenda.
So annual discussion by the board. These are exemptions that will apply for your 2024 certified values that will be issued by the appraisal district in August of this year. So what you have the ability to grant a general residential homestead exemption in over 65 and to say a few years back across all the Woodlands MUDs. The decision was made by those boards to adopt the maximum 20% general residential homestead exemption, and that's been renewed each year. You have to make the decision each year, even if you're keeping it saying it's a new tax levy, so you have to make a decision on exemptions as to that particular tax levy. You also have the ability to adopt an over 65 and disabled exemption. Questions for who decides from an earlier meeting, who decides that somebody's disabled or what have you. That's an application that a taxpayer has to file with the appraisal district. MUDs don't make that decision. That's the appraisal district, because that designation is applied across taxing entities. So MUD 47 last year adopted $30,000 over 65 and disabled. There's not a max on it. There is a minimum of 3,000, which you're well over that. There's a range in the Woodlands between 10,000 and 30,500. I think MUD 46 was one a little bit higher than everybody last year, but y'all are at the high end of what's currently been granted. We prepared the resolution as though you were going to adopt the same exemptions as last year, but that's not required. You can revisit it. You can discuss if you want to keep the same general residential homestead, but assume that that's the decision, as well as the over 65 and disabled. If you are satisfied with the 30,000, or if you want to evaluate something else.
What's involved if we wanted to raise the exemption? Do you run some analytics? Yeah.
So the way that works typically is the financial advisor happens here this evening would prepare a brief summary of what the cost would be to the district in certain increments. So y'all would say, okay, do I want it in $1,000 increments or $500 increments, what have you, up to whatever the top range is. Y'all would look at that, and that's going to be a function of how many people do you have in your district that that would apply to, and then what is your tax levy, what's your tax rate, to figure out what the reduction in revenue would be as a result of granting that additional exemption. And that would show up in your budget cycle in July, August, September, later this year, because you would have that reduced amount tax value, basically, or tax revenue.
Is that a cumbersome process, Adam? I'd like to take a look at it.
What was our budget done on? These numbers?
Assuming the same exemption.
Same, right?
And if the exemption is raised, money comes from higher rates from.
It is a stacked exemption, so someone who qualifies for both, you get the 20% plus the additional amount, so.
And the age 65, when do they need to be 65 as far as to be eligible for that? I'm just curious.
65.
That tax, calendar tax. Got you.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
And this would, if we make a decision in the next month or two, that's effective for 2024?
Correct. So we'll have the tax rate discussion in August, September, and that's when you decide. And it will apply for that year, 24.
What would be a common increment to analyze $1,000?
Yeah, I mean, boards will look at anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 increments typically. But if you want to see between 30 and 35 every 1,000, we can do that.
Be great.
So do you use some assumed demographics to do that?
So the appraisal district provides how many people have actually filed.
Okay.
You have 1945 now, and that's as of today. That's on the most current supplemental, the appraisal district out of 8,000 accounts.
So that's people that are over 65 or people that are disabled
Both.
or both? Okay.
So the section one,
That's most.
the section one is,
Just 1940.
So about
It's not people over 65, it's people that have the exemption.
people have filed for the exemption.
You don't, for example,
Yeah, you homesteaded, it has to be homesteaded, your homestead
yeah,
at 65. That doesn't mean everybody that's 65 in your district gets that, they don't.
but it can also flow, I have survivor benefits.
Right.
I have the 65.
There's a lot of different scenarios.
Yes, it doesn't mean the person's 65, it means they have the benefit.
do you have to apply for the 65 exemption?
Mhm.
No.
Well,
Or just the disability side, or both you do?
for the exemption, you apply,
Mhm.
but I still retain that exemption.
Yeah, it makes sense.
There's the right spouse.
Sure.
Continue.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right, but he had to apply for it, and
Yeah.
everybody will have to, and then the disabled, you know, you have to apply for that too.
Mhm.
You get one or the other, you don't get both. And ours is the same exemption, same amount.
But then there's also a gap. If I were like 50, I wouldn't get that exemption. You have to be a certain age to retain the 65 plus exemption.
Oh, with the survivorship.
Yeah, if it was like a May, December, 30 years old and 65, the 30-year-old would not get that.
Right.
It would not flow. That's retained.
Does the appraisal district have any forecasting of when how many 62-year-olds or 63-year-olds, like when it would start to roll into the exemption?
So.
Brian, if it's okay to speak on that. We don't have that projection because you have to apply.
Hmm.
So we don't have demographics that say there's 1,000 more 64s and in year 25, those 1,000 roll up to 65. You have to apply for either over 65 or disabled. In your resolution, it talks about requirement, it talks about what that category means about 65 and what disability means. It gives a very general explanation. But you have to apply and get approved. Just because you apply, you may not meet those requirements. So we go through, we analyze it, and if you meet those requirements, then we'll approve it. Notice too, in the public records on valuation of housing, you don't show anymore, because I think statutory, you don't show disability and you don't show over 65 as the exemption to protect the privacy of those taxpayers, which is a very good step.
Yeah. So the range of exemptions the other MUDs are doing, you're saying is we're kind of in the middle of the fairway.
You're at the high end,
We're on the high end. You said something about mud 46, didn't you?
30,500, so they're $500.
Should be about.
Okay, okay. So. Okay. Ray, you wanted to see, so we don't have to do this now. So if you want to see the impact of a incremental 1,000, is that what you want to do? See, is that
Up to 35,000.
just to see what that does to the overall budget? That's what you're going to kind of model for us. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we'll defer that to next time. Okay, item 17, this is discuss potential funding alternatives related to the SJRA Woodlands Division proposed infrastructure projects. Right?
16, we didn't get 16.
The regular month.
Oh, sorry, sorry.
Division report.
Yep, sorry.
Almost. Still important.
Yeah.
I just jumped over. Come on, Chris, I got you, man. I got you. Sorry about that.
Items. The first is the final report for the phase 2 of the wastewater strategic plan will be out by the end of the month. That's gonna be loaded on the Google Drive, and Eric and Shelley can let y'all know when it's out there, so y'all can take a look at it. It's about 200 pages, so we're not gonna print copies of it. The second item is, in front of y'all, y'all have this document. This is the supplemental agreement, the first one, for the wastewater treatment plant number 1 replacement. So we told y'all we would bring a draft to you. That's what this is. This is also only for the first installment. This is not the entire fee bond sale for every phase of the replacement. This is only for design. This is what we talked about, design being about 35 million. So this shows a bond sale of 35 million.
For sure. Here you go.
I got more copies if you'd
Oh,
like.
yeah.
Yeah.
Send them down here.
I also have a copy.
Yep, we're good.
Is this on our Google Drive or can
It
it?
will be.
can
I
it be-
forget
Okay.
Kelly said I will.
All right, thank you.
But just a reminder, this is the first bond sale, 35 million for design only. Construction will come back for future bond sales. We know this will change. There's been a lot of discussion about various items that is needed. So we know this is going to change, but we told you to get your draft, and so we did. Just a reminder, the preliminary path forward we talked about was presented today or in January. Looking for a vote around March, April, just to keep the path forward moving because we have no funds to move forward with the replacement of this.
Is this language pretty boilerplate, or is there anything we already do?
Very good.
So I've not looked at it yet. I think at this point, we've got item 17 to talk about in terms of funding. It is built, I again haven't looked at it, but I think Chris mentioned in an earlier meeting, it is built on the 2017 supplemental amendment that was used for the first time. We had a rehab project that was bond financed. Up until then, the only things that were bond financed were new capital versus for new capacity. Older rehab work was able to essentially be cash financed through water sewer rates. We had a large repair item that had to be bond financed. It wasn't a way to cash finance that back in 2017. So we did a supplemental agreement, a one-off essentially, but tried to have a structure that we could use in the future. And that was that one. Now, this is a much larger scale. What we're talking about, pushing up to 600-700, depending on the day. What we're talking about, millions of dollars in multiple tranches of bonds. So this is a much larger scale. So I do not anticipate this will be the final version of this agreement. First thing we got to do is get all the districts in agreement on what's going to be the path forward. So once we have that, then we'll be able to consider the first tranche.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for that. We're going to discuss this actually in the next item, kind of alternative to this. So, yeah.
I have, unless you have a question on anything else.
On the one line break, the 16-inch that was on December 26th. I think that was an AC line, right? What was the vintage of that line?
That's a good question. I do not know off the top of my head. I can get it to Shelley who can give it to you.
Yeah, and obviously lines are on our mind, right? So it's kind of important. Second question was, I think it was listed in your report that it was due to upheaval or earth
The collar
change.
broke.
Is that what happened? Was at a joint?
It was at a joint where the collar itself actually broke. It could have been ground movement, could have been upheaval, but at this point, we just know the collar.
Okay.
No construction in the area, nothing.
Okay, so not a third party strike. Was a coupon pulled
Yeah,
and stored and,
16-foot joint was pulled.
okay, so you picked up some joints, some along the way, some collars along the way. And then the 2 million gallons, I guess, that was kind of lost, that was kind of hit your lost and unaccounted for. Help us understand 2 million gallons versus 8 million versus 500,000. Was that a lot? Seems like a lot of water.
Yeah, generally for a water leak, 16-inch, 500,000 or less. So in this case, we couldn't find all the mud valves. So as we're isolating the lines, there was quite a few various mud valves that we needed to isolate because y'all's lines tie into it. So there's some 8-inch lines that we couldn't identify. And so that took another 2 or 3 hours to find those valves. And so that, of course, you have 16-inch line just blowing and going, you're gonna have water on it.
So as you said, mud lines, we didn't know where they were. They were, these aren't on maps and GIS systems.
We don't have access to your valves. We just know what we can see, and we got with Randy, and I don't know if you were contacted, but got some help going out there to try to find them. But you are dealing with lines that are 40, 50 years old. So
I understand.
they're kind of hard to find some of the valves sometimes.
Especially at night.
Yeah, knows everything.
There's a water main on your line, the 16 is that had a valve that you shut off,
Correct. So
but there
you
was
got
back feeding from the other direction or something.
exactly. So on our line, your lines are all tied into it. So we know where our valves are, but we do not always know where your valves are. And so that's where we got to get support from y'all to come in and say, okay, where's your valves at? How do you isolate this? So once ours were isolated, we still had the back feed coming in. This case is where the old Fuddruckers was. There was a valve over there that was identified and fed back into the line. Once that was stopped, good to go.
So this could happen again.
And again and again.
I don't mean the AC lines breaking. I mean just not being able to isolate regardless of what happens, right?
If you look at any water leak we've had in the past, well, shoot, forever and a day, if there's a high water loss, it's somebody generally couldn't find it. Last one was on 242 and Northway. Those valves were hard to find. Now,
So is this something we want to try to identify? I mean, I ran, big pipeline operations, and knowing where mainline valves or shut off valves is really important. I mean, that's like the one thing you want to know for this very reason. And letting natural gas out of a pipe is a lot different than water. Suffice it to say, it's the same idea, right? So I would expect in my operations to know, say, okay, if we don't know where all the lines are, let's go where the valves are. Let's go find them.
yeah, we've spent 2 years up until
No,
about a year ago. We went off of our line and we isolated, we found all of our valves. I'd say 98%. But we spent a couple years GPSing them, digging them up, fixing the valve stacks and everything to find where we could on our valves. So when we go out, we find like mud valves that have been buried or our valves that have been buried, we'll bring them up to grade and we'll GPS, we'll put them in our GIS. So we try to find wherever our line is, one off. So in other words, if your line ties into it, it was just found because it was buried, we're going to GPS that and pull that into our data. So next time we have a break in that area, we know this one, that one, that one.
yeah, that's what I expect. Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's trial and error until you find them. They've been buried for 20, 30 years sometimes.
Or covered up.
I get it.
And all the
Somebody put a
above.
sidewalk over it or somebody put landscaping over it, it's gone.
I mean, they're all in our GIS system. So we do know where they are.
Okay, well, that
But
helps.
that's within 10, 20 feet.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the gymnastics that has to happen when everybody's all on hands on deck. There's water flowing everywhere, and we're trying to get our maps and okay, go down here, we'll have, metal detectors sometimes, or all just trying to find that valve box. And sometimes it happens in minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, they're right there, readily available. And sometimes it's not readily available to the guys in the field. Let's say, they find the nearest valves, they close them, but they realize that, maybe it doesn't isolate the line, or maybe it has put someone else out of service. And there's a different way to isolate to minimize the downtime on the customers in that area. So it's not just a matter of, you already know if it breaks right there, we know exactly which valves need to be found already. Kind of have to assess the area, figure out what's going where. If we could forecast where the things would come, that'd be great. But we do it as fast as we can.
Okay, I understand. All right.
So yeah, no, we're not doing it blind.
Okay, that helps a lot.
But I will tell you, this water line that failed, it was the second project on the AC water line list to it. This is actually the North Town Center water line. Just FYI, it's one of the other urgent ones.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Any more questions for SJRA in their report? Okay, now on to 17. Discuss alternative funding options for the bonding that's necessary for the replacements.
So
All right.
just kind of go back through time last year and look at, the 10-year plan came out early in the year. Throughout the year, we learned about AC, we learned about the wastewater treatment plant in more detail. And then there's other projects that are on that 10-year plan in upwards of 632 million, I think, is what's on the plan. When you take a look at what the result of that would be, I've got a lot of questions from the directors on, well, what's the bottom line? What does it end up looking like to the customer? And how is that billed, and what is it going to look like on the, all those things. And so we started looking at, right now, as part of the supplemental agreement that we just talked about, the logistic of that would be SRA sells bonds. And keep in mind, that's just 35 million of the 600 and eventual 32 million, whatever, over a decade or more. How do we pay for that? And so what that contemplates in the way that it was done in 2017 was that SRA would sell bonds, and then they would identify the wholesale water rate that it would take to pay back those bonds, that tranche. And then that wholesale water rate would be pushed to the MUDs and then passed through to the customer. Typically, I don't think you've done any upcharge on it's just a pure pass through. When you look at that, not on 35 million, but when you look at that on 632 million, that could add hundreds of dollars to the monthly water bill. So that's when people started saying, wait a minute, is that the right move, or what does that look like to the customer? Is that sellable? All that. So I was asked to look at a couple different alternatives to how that might be funded. And in the All MUDs meeting, there was a director that said, well, we always did it with bonds. That was kind of the message that was said that day. And that would be kind of another option, is that the directors or the MUDs go out to the voters and ask for voter authorization for bond authorization to essentially get approval to sell their own bonds. That has some logistical headaches associated with it, as you can imagine. If just the treatment plant project has 5 or 6 bond applications for SRA, and all 10 MUDs did the same thing, had bond authorization, sold your own bonds, you'd be looking at 40, 50, 60 bond applications across all the MUDs, and none of the MUDs could probably get the same interest rates that SRA can. SRA has a very good bond rating, and it's just more efficient. A lot less issuance costs, the soft costs, the administrative costs to sell a bond. When you have 60 of them, it's a lot higher than when you have 6. So for those reasons, that option's potentially problematic, but it does put it on the tax side instead of the water bill side. That's really the concept. Where's the money's generally gonna be the same that's needed to fund all these projects. You want it to be sitting on your water bill or in your tax bill, more or less. And then there's a third option, and there may be more. I think these are the kind of the three that we've been looking at, and really our intention is just to introduce the boards to these concepts. I think more investigation, more data, pros and cons, those types of things to break down the different options is certainly necessary. But the third would be to have more, a rollback tax election to identify an M&O tax rate that would be needed to cover, that would create enough revenue to pay back the bond. So you still have the benefit of the SRA bonds in that scenario, but you're generating tax revenue from your M&O side. Now, if you had a bond authorization.
M&O, sorry.
Maintenance and operation. Yeah, taxes are generally, property taxes for MUDs are generally broken up into debt service.
Right.
And M&O.
Okay.
So M&O, just kind of as a history lesson or education, is M&O taxes are the most flexible when it comes to what you can spend those on. Debt service, if you raise your debt service rates, you can only use that to pay back those bonds. That's it. You can't use it for operations maintenance. You can't use it to go fix stuff. Nope, it's got to be on what that specifically was identified for. So if you went to the voters for bond authorization, it's going to specifically tag what exactly it's supposed to be for, and you can't use it for anything else. If you go to the voters and say, look, we've got all these things that need to be fixed, redone, rehabbed, whatever, and you, the voters, you can choose. You want it on your water rate, you want it on your tax bill. If they say tax bill, then we can identify of all of the infrastructure that's needed, both on the SRA side and the WWA side, because you've got most likely in the future, you're going to have your own small diameter line stuff that we operate to fix. I know the system's not as old, but you still have things that we do. So you'd identify your share of all of those things and come up with your own tax rate that would generate enough revenue to pay back the debt on the projects. So that'd kind of be the 1, 2, 3 different options. So basically what's kind of been talked about at a couple of the other MUDs is to kind of come up with a pro con of a couple of those, maybe do some scenarios on what the bottom line would look like in terms of average water rate, bill versus what would the average tax bill look like versus water bill, those types of things. Obviously, if you're on the water and sewer side or the water rate side, it's on usage. And so you use more water, you pay more theoretically, right? Versus on the tax side, it's on property value. So, you could argue that, commercial has a little bit larger take in that, perhaps, relatively speaking, compared to the water usage. But that's just we'd have to look at the numbers just to kind of see what it looks like for each of the different districts. And then lastly, there was discussion, I know in the PEC meeting, and you've heard this, that, maybe it's something that we survey the community, say, well, if you want options on how this looks, would you want it on your water bill and have a $300 water bill a month or whatever the number is, or do you want it on your tax bill? And there's some different psychologies around that, but.
Is it fair? Thanks for, I wasn't aware of the third option. Is it fair to say that all the MUDs to get this done, we have to all do the same thing?
Ideally, but legally, no.
Practically?
I mean, practically, it would.
I'm not worried about something that's hard to do because, we're here to solve problems, not just to coast along. So I'm not worried about working hard and making things, but is it realistically practical, I guess?
Don't know yet. This is the first month of starting the conversation about 3 different potential options, and then we'll come back with more information that kind of offers scenarios that directors can look at and provide feedback on. I think it's too early to say at this point.
A rollback election means that each MUD has,
Mhm.
that shows up if you live in a MUD, you go and have an election for your MUD's language, and then there's some amount that gets allocated to each MUD based on like how does it work?
Well, so,
How do you divvy up on the third item?
well, we would identify what each MUD share of all the infrastructure renewal would be, include and add in the WWA stuff, 447.
Then back into, based on what the cost would be over time and what that chunk of money would be, Adam would run numbers to figure out what kind of a essentially blended tax rate you would need to be able to come up with all that money over time and back into what your rate would be. And so let's say as a developed district, your limit on Senate Bill 2, because your tax rate is, your M&O rate is a little over 9.5 cents. Let's say your 3.5% increase is, let's say 10 cents. But Adam's analysis comes back and says, okay, well, we need 13, 14 cents. So you have to go to the voters because you're over that 10-cent rate and ask for approval to levy that, say, 13-cent tax rate. If they approve it, then that's your new starting point. That's your new benchmark. So then going forward, you're subject to rollback based on the percentage of additional revenue over what you did on that rollback rate. So you can rely on that. It basically resets your benchmark for rollback purposes. And you set aside that money to pay the debt service or pay the wholesale water and sewer rates that the river authority is charging you that they need to pay the debt service on the bonds, which allows for residents who itemize, of course, to get the benefit of the property tax deduction, where if you pass it through solely on water sewer rates, you don't get that benefit. Now, don't know how many folks are itemizing and getting the benefit up to $10,000 on property tax, but probably a fair number. So
is it like, it feels like it's a foregone conclusion that the wastewater plant, it's barreling that way. I mean, I see the agreement here for the 35 million, the draft, and we're talking about the bonds. But I haven't even toured the wastewater plant yet, and that's going to be helpful for me. So I know Ed's gonna, because all I hear is we have to do it. We have to do this, right? But I personally, I just, I'd like to see the plant first before we, it just feels like we're going down this way, and I don't think we've all agreed on this yet, have we? We're not. I mean,
There's a lot of discussion going on.
Okay,
Say
yeah.
that.
Yeah, but I just wanted just to say that as far as I understand, there hasn't been a firm resounding yes that we're going this way,
Correct.
despite this other side conversations.
start the conversation about costs to where you're not, we don't have any districts that kind of go into saying, oh, $35 million bond issue when it's not even for actual hard infrastructure, it's for design and engineering. And then you come up, later and, okay, we need to do the next bond issue. And well, how are we going to pay for this? I don't want to do this. We want to try to work this out ideally on the front end and have y'all
Sure.
Go into it eyes wide open before we do a first supplemental.
And 2 times tonight I heard 600 million, but wasn't the wastewater treatment plant 200 million? So where's the other 400 million?
AC.
Okay.
It's 200. The wastewater treatment plant is 230 to 300 range.
Okay.
So that's about 5.
Okay.
Ish. And then there's a number of other small things that add up in the overall 10-year plan. And we can get you a copy of that. I think there'll be a new one out there that
I'm sure I have. It's.
Yeah, it was early on. I think when you guys just first got here, the 10-year plan. I know it's in our thing.
Oh, I did see the 10-year plan.
Yeah, there's some wells in there. There's some.
Just a lot of millions. I had 4 million in my mind for both the AC and then the wastewater, but not 6. So.
Well, and I do want to caveat too, is, we keep talking about those numbers as a whole, but each district has their own share of that. So the number that ends up going down to each district, and granted, you're a bigger district, but that's not the number you're talking about for your.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
It'll be a lot smaller numbers per district, for sure. Still a lot of money though.
So the plan to talk about this, are we going to use this meeting time to do this? Are we going to go chat offline just as a kind of a brainstorming? What's the process here?
So I
To
think
kind of-
at this point, it was just to introduce the different options and get a feel from boards as to whether there were any options that were hard no-goes of, say, hey, I definitely don't want to, bond finance, or, you know what, I don't want to go to the voters on a rollback, or, I definitely don't want to put it through my water. That way staff and Adam aren't, wasting
Yeah,
time
yeah.
running scenarios for options that it has no interest in. So that was the purpose of today, is just to start that dialogue,
Mhm.
get a feel for board's interest in the various options, and then come back with more.
So
More
each
information.
MUD does their own bonds. Like one time you mentioned, maybe it was last month, that one MUD can't hold up the whole process, right? But what if it's 2 or 3 MUDs? Like at what point does it become a no-go? Any ideas on something?
What? You want to speak on that, or you want me? According to what our attorneys told us is, if there's something that has to be done, or the, level of service in the contracts, such as providing wastewater treatment, then nobody can hold it up. So what we're doing is we're going through the process like we spent for the last 2.5 years, taking the directors through what's happening at the wastewater plant, how long it's going to take for us to get there. And at the end of the day, this is the first agreement, but behind this agreement, there's 6 years of work before you have a plant on the ground, right? So if four MUDs come up and say, we don't want to do it, but we have per contract, everything lined out, which is all the preliminary engineering reports, all the condition assessments, engineering opinions, then technically, as long as our general manager agrees and the board, I'm guessing, we go for it.
And I mean, I could see a scenario where the voters might approve for this first phase of 35 million, but they may not do the second or third phase, right? Are you in kind of a conundrum that way?
It's the same with
If
the
you go that,
directors. If every director here agrees and says, or every MUD agrees and says, yes, we want to go forward in 2 years, new MUD directors say, why they ever go down this path? Which is why we're here, because the 10-year project plan was a lot smaller 5 years ago. But the director said, give us the full picture of everything you see coming up and let us make the decision. So that's why your 10-year project plan is 600 million, because there's everything that we can see coming up that's a big risk in there. We ought to have these conversations and say what's needed.
And the goal would be, in perfect world, that Adam would be able to run numbers based on the ultimate bond issue need. And you would go to the voters one time for a reduced amount from what tranche 6 would be, but by being able to stockpile it over time, you'd have a lower ultimate rate. So you'd only go to the voters once for a rollback rate that would give you a new baseline that would allow you to generate enough income over that full cycle to be able to pay the rates.
I think there's value in getting I can see both sides of this, right? There's the ultimate cost and hassle of doing 10 different bonds. The idea of going to the public and getting them to vote on a bond, which is what we're doing for schools and infrastructure and all that stuff anyway. So that's not unusual to voters to understand this and to authorize it. Kind of gets, your constituents on board. And then you got to prepare the communications with all that. That dovetails into a lot of communication planning and doing. So I can see both sides of this. I'm glad we've got 3 potential ways to think about it. Personally, I don't know if there's one that I would just say, don't do.
And they do have time constraints or time repercussions as well. Because if we do go to the voters, there's only certain times we can do that. So, and that public education process to even get us to that point where a voter could walk in and know what they're voting on, is gonna take a minute. So we know that we need to be talking about this now, because if that is the direction that ends up going, we have a lot of work to do. Which we knew all along. I mean, when the 10-year plan came out, we knew it. It was big the year before too. So we knew that. It's even more important now.
I'm not worried about a lot of work.
Right.
I don't think anyone is, right? Okay.
But we can't start until we know which direction we're going.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or how to portray it.
So you're going out to each of the MUDs. You're doing this, we're having this same conversation we just had. All the MUDs this week. will we see end results of that potentially to then get away with the kind of which way the wind's blowing on this, and that might steer some way.
Some sort of a summary
Right.
that's the general consensus of all the
Be
other
interesting to
MUDs of where they're
so you don't have
going.
to Listen to 10 different MUD
Yeah.
recordings. I mean, I think some feedback around that would be helpful. I hope don't have to wait a month to get it. I mean, if we can.
Well, we need to develop the pros and cons and some of the financial analysis to even give you the data.
Yeah.
So that's gonna take a little bit of time. So ideally, probably, I don't know how long, we hadn't really talked about the timing, but we're committed to getting that put together pretty quick. I mean, I don't know if it'll be done by the next meeting, but we're certainly gonna.
Be good. Okay. I mean, yeah, the clock's ticking and we have to work, we'll work.
So if we did take it to the voters, theoretically, when would that election be?
You only got two options. It's not gonna be this May. And
November?
and November might be a little quick. And then some don't like May the next year. And so, I mean, just do the math. That's.
What's wrong with May next year?
Well, May next year would be a possibility for a bond election. For a rollback election, it has to be after you set what your intended rate is, then you're forced to do the rollback, but you set your rate in August, September, so it's only a November election for rollback. We have two options for bond election, uniform May or uniform November rollback.
Okay.
But November this year could be doable.
No,
No?
no, I don't think we're gonna have enough information to be able to get all the MUDs to a position.
Well, I meant to take it to the voters. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's probably too,
Okay.
One of the ideas at the BEC, this has been talked about in general terms, was, doing a survey and saying, if push came to shove, would you rather see it on your water bill or on your tax bill?
Yeah.
And kind of gauge that and say, well, okay, if you want it this way, then we're gonna need you to vote, in the
Right.
upcoming deal. I mean, that's what it would look like. So I think that has some merit to ask those questions as part of the public outreach campaign. For sure. Good feedback.
And that could be done in November. Survey.
Well, that doesn't have to be tied to any month. That could be done.
Okay.
The survey. Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever. Yeah, we're actively working with the PEC, working with Holloway, the consultant that was hired. And
Right.
so we're working through that right now. We're working through their process right now. We're not to the point where we're
Right.
building surveys just yet, but we're building up to that.
Yeah. There's a community that I have rental properties in, and we had a similar situation where we needed to replace really old pipelines and stuff. And it got to be the same thing with the entire community in that. So it was kind of like, well, do you want to see more of this on your water bill, or do you want this on your, end of year tax bill? And it ended up that what we were looking to do, we had a fixed cost on it. And then we all voted on it, everybody in the community that was a property owner. And it ended up being, what was called a special service bill, that it didn't affect the taxes and it didn't affect the monthly water usage bill, but it was a finite number that, we were paying $1,800 a quarter for 2 years, every single property owner. But we knew when the start was and when the end is going to be, and we know specifically what it's there for. And that's it. And I was like, well, if we're looking at a design project and we have a finite number of what it's going to cost to do this, can we not just put it out to the voters that this would be an extra charge just for this particular item to do that? And when it's done, it's done.
We can consider it. I can tell you that could be catastrophic to
Okay.
certain residents.
Okay.
Because of the numbers we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because what happens when you do it, both water or tax, is theoretically the amount owed is going to be based on usage, which again, not always exactly this way, but
Right.
Someone that may be on a fixed income probably is not sitting in the same house size or whatever or value
Right.
as someone that a young family or whatever the demographic is. You know what I mean?
So in both the second and the third one, right, where your SJRA is not doing the bonds, but we know how that gets allocated. That gets,
One there.
the third one they are as well. Okay, so in the second one, would
Second,
you,
one, the mud issues the bonds.
and then would each mud go out for an amount that, how does that amount get allocated? Based on what we think usage is or based on the tax base?
Well,
Initial thinking, just,
it would be from the river authority perspective, it would be our pro rata share based on usage of what the costs are. It's just, the problem is just the inefficiency of that many bond issues.
yeah, I know that side. I'm just trying to see, but does it come through the rate? Is it ultimately allocated to the rate? I mean, you're recovering through the tax, but you're divvying it up by the rate.
You're paying it to, we would have to work out the details with the river authority. We've never done one that way,
Right.
but thinking out loud, I would imagine we would have to look at what the allocation was of usage among all the various MUDs at some point in time. Again, we have to work through the details of that, but at some point it would be based on usage because in the contract, repair and rehab is based on usage. New capacity was based on number of connections that each district was had under the contract. So there were different allocation methods for new capacity versus rehab and rehabilitation. Now, all the MUDs in the river authority could agree to change that if it was more efficient to change it to be based on capacity owned as opposed to O&M. It's subject to agreement among the parties, but short of that, I would imagine we need to talk about it in terms of capacity usage at some point in time.
Yeah.
But we've never gone down that road,
Okay.
so I'm, speculating based on, what we know on the contract at this point.
All right. More to come. Well, thanks for kicking it off and giving us a perspective. I know we have a lot more questions, a lot more to work through. Yeah. All right, good. That takes care of 17. Bear Branch update, anything going on there? Item number 18?
Actually, give a quick update on that. Back in December, we received a draft report from the consultant, LJA. Since then, we've been reviewing that draft, providing them comments, asking questions, ultimately getting to the point where internally, including Woodlands Water, understands the results of that feasibility study for Bear Branch. We are getting to that point, and I would say over the next quarter, there will be a meeting set up with the MUDs and the partner stakeholders for that study to be able to present those results.
Okay.
Once we do that, moving forward, we would get into more of the preliminary final design stages, ultimately getting to construction project probably in a couple of years. So it's a process, but happy to take any questions y'all have. But
Remind everyone what MUDs are involved in that, if you would.
so it's led by MUD 67. And Eric helped me out here. 5 MUDs associated with Bear Branch. And then Metro is in it also. This is the specific. That's 67, 47,
46.
46,
60.
and 60, and 7,
Plus Metro.
and then Metro.
Okay, thanks. That can be done with this RNA stuff, M&A stuff, M&O, bonds.
That is.
Are we paying for this?
It's 3 years down the road.
Sorry.
So that is, the funding, in part at least, is coming through Texas Water Development Board grant and bond funds that were led by MUD 67. And then there's also an interlocal agreement between those 6 MUDs regarding funding also.
But do we have any idea what this is gonna cost? Money's on our mind, I guess. Maybe that's what I'm asking.
I
I mean, is this 5 million, 25 million?
Yeah. 5 million.
I thought it was like 10 to 13.
Oh, I mean, it was a less.
All over the board.
I think it's up in the 10.
Do I hear 12?
went through the Texas Water Development Board, and it was through their flood infrastructure funds. And those funds are at 0% interest, so. that's
Yeah,
why
it was 11.3 was the project budget that was attached to the agreement. This was the interlocal that was from February of 22, Mod 7, 46, 47, 60, 67 in Metro.
Okay.
So, yeah, stay
Okay.
tuned. for
Thanks.
result
We've
for
heard about it for a long time and now it's kind of, I think it's time to get a report.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Okay, thank you. Number 19, receive the attorney's report.
Nothing that is not separately on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, item 20, matters related to director's election to be called May 4th. Who's taking that one? Gonna do that? Page 47.
Second pair, pages 47 to 51, that goes through our rationale for the recommendation that the district conduct the election jointly with Montgomery County, which is what we've done in 2020 and 2022. Just primarily the laws have become much more onerous for conducting the elections independently. And so to ensure that we have professionals that run the election and can do that for the district along with MCAD and various other organizations, we recommend that county's offering to conduct it jointly for us. We ought to go for it.
You don't want to take in all this work?
We've done it
I know.
before.
That's incredible.
It's a change.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more trip
Yeah.
wires.
I had one question. I don't know if the others do. So it does say that then the district would be responsible for providing the ballot language to the county.
Yes.
Is that just I know we went before running in 2022, we came up to figure out the order of the names that appears. Is that what that means?
So.
Is there more to it than that?
So, position for a director election is pretty simple. So and so, but the order of the ballots is determined by casting of lots.
Yes.
And so that's done after we know if we have a contested election, so how many directors there are, then there's a process that I think they come up here
Yeah,
and.
We did.
we did.
Picked it out of the hat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll continue.
That'll continue.
Okay.
And that
we-
becomes the ballot language,
Correct.
the
We
sequence,
give that to,
the order of the names.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's normal. That's how other elections are too,
The
as far as
casting
the
of lots.
order.
Yes, that's in the election code.
Are we approving this or we just,
We are
it doesn't say that, but
to the county of the district's intent to participate in a joint election.
and you are, I think you guys are making that notice or that communication.
Correct.
Okay.
We do need action to authorize the
Okay.
notification.
Okay. So do we have a motion to authorize that notification to the county for the upcoming election?
I move that we notify the county of this.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Yeah.
Opposed? Excellent. Passed. Well done. That's kind of
And
a-
21 is the other election item. That's the one that has the supplemental agenda that's required by law. Item 1, we need to take action on. Item 2, we do not need to take action on since it would be a joint election and would be conducted by the county. They will set the compensation for election officials. So we need to adopt the order on the election.
Okay, so that's another motion. Do we have a motion to adopt the order calling the election?
Also move.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed. Great, thank you. General Manager's report.
All right, we pretty much covered all of our items. I just wanted to point out a couple of things in your packet. There is a letter you'll see from Jim Stinson. That was a thank you for the resolution that we, and the reception that we provided to him for his retirement. So I'm very thankful to all the boards and trustees. That's in the packet. I also wanted to point out that SJ's new general manager started yesterday, and was notified today that they are planning to have a reception
so that the Woodlands Bucks can meet Aubrey Spear on February 7th at 5 p.m., 5 to 6:30. 2-7 at 5
We're at,
at the Waco Woodlands Division Office on Sawdust,
okay,
where we've met
okay.
for the all months.
So we drive on up to Lake Conroe.
No, no.
All right.
And
You wanted, okay, go ahead.
other item I had was to kick it over to John, get a quick update on the conference.
Good.
Page 56, you got your communications report in your packet. Now you'll see various examples of our latest pieces there. But if you skip over to page 59, I want to spend just a little bit of time noting the results from our community survey. So we did this last year, the results of which informed to a large degree our strategic plan. We reran this, and it's an excellent gauge of how we did this past year. Before I get into a little bit, you can get the whole report by scanning that QR code at the top right there. So you'll see all 17 questions that we asked last year, all the data that we got from our 850 respondents and so forth. So you can get the full report there. Just some quick highlights. We had 17 questions that we asked last year that we re-asked, plus 3 new ones, gauging in various ways favorability ratings and knowledge levels. We improved on every single one of the 17 questions to varying degrees. The knowledge regarding municipal utility districts, those reporting a lot or some increased 8%. Your unfavorability rating decreased 54% this past year. Favorable rating increased 20. So look through that. If you have any questions about any of that information, any of the results, please let me know. But I think that's a really encouraging report. That has informed our new strategic plan for the next year that was approved last Wednesday by the BOT. That's actually included next in your packet. That's fairly similar to the one that we just completed, but you'll see much heavier emphasis on infrastructure this coming year, in addition to all of our standard topics.
John, you and I spoke in December about because your one of these items is the items on your monthly bill clearly explained.
Yes.
And I had a resident email me about making it easier to understand taxes and putting it on the bill. So I'd like to keep the conversation going.
Yeah. We've not made any headway. I apologize.
No, that's right.
I think that's something that Eric and I can sit down and brainstorm on how to clarify that.
Yeah, just more transparency, just moving in the same direction that y'all have been doing for the last couple of years.
Absolutely. Hopefully you did see some of our messaging in December on the rate increases, which included a look at mud taxes. And there was a component there on how your mud taxes are arrived at. We want to keep building on that. So I think you're right on target.
Great survey results. Congratulations to, WWA, and obviously you're interacting with customers is very favorable and paying off.
88% of respondents that connected with our customer service and billing staff reported a satisfactory.
Yeah, that's awesome. That
Seems like it's
Kudos to them.
it's positioned well when we're talking about increases to the taxes or water bill, that you've kind of set the platform for more transparency and adoption.
Yeah, I mean, this was developed and started, at least the framework for this, September, October of 22. And then for the first time last year, we put that strategic communication plan in motion. And we take it very seriously. And what our goal is to try to reach as many customers as we possibly can, knowing that not everybody gets their information in the exact same spot or the same way. So we try to diversify the same messaging in different forums, try to hit this. And it's a juggling act. I know that, we're missing something. We're trying to continually, press on the things we see are working. And now we have, Holloway through SJA's contract to help us fill in some of the gaps. So we take it seriously. Awesome. Yeah.
Flyer just got passed around, a great educational opportunity coming up on the 22nd of February, the Harris Galveston Science District. And others are helping to put on the 12th annual Water Conservation Symposium. Lots of great information. I think it's quite relevant to you guys, so check that out. And we are a sponsor of that too.
And a board member on another board in the Woodlands here is one of the members that founded that.
Yeah, Paul Nelson.
Paul Nelson.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah. And appreciate all the information on, you know, draining the water system and pipes and all that. I mean, I've had lots of my friends is really helpful, like make sure you turn off the valve below the ground, not just the ones on that you can see. And so, so
We've been getting calls.
yeah, I'm sure you have.
emails.
Yeah.
I think we're a little bit better prepared as a community than we were a few years
Yeah,
ago.
no doubt.
You know what's amazing? Yeah, for 34,000 connections and the amount of calls that they're receiving after day one of this harbor freeze, it's still pretty small.
Yeah.
You know, maybe, you know, comparatively speaking.
Yeah. Well, it could
That
be.
says a lot.
Yeah.
Communication,
Yeah, man.
listening, paying
Yeah,
attention.
yeah.
All the above.
No, that's excellent. Well done.
Thank you.
Well, thanks.
And Esther didn't note it in their report, but they reported, I think, early this morning that they are having very little, if any, problems at the plants. That they're all
Yeah,
running smoothly. No major issues, and so that's good too.
Yeah. So good, good, good. Okay, we're getting there, folks. We're moving on. Item 23. So receive presentation from Howard Hughes. Dan is here to talk to us, give an update on 1488, an opportunity for you all to ask questions. Barrett is here as well to help. Adam's here to help us understand some of the bond that was done. And this is just kind of an open session to learn a little bit, get caught up and get an update. So thanks for showing up. Sorry it's so late, but.
Way it is.
Yeah.
Mud meetings are like this.
Yeah.
I got some new board members, right? You're a new appointee, so I'll make sure you have my card. If you have any developer questions, you can call me anytime. Call me anytime. And you guys already have my card. There, if y'all need one, I got one. Old school. A lot of people don't have those anymore. Wanted to give you an update on what's happening on 1488. In 2021, there was a contract signed with the district whereby we were going to go install a bunch of utilities to serve some future commercial development. Well, I've got a couple pieces of good news today. We have our first commercial land sale up there. So we're very excited about that. We've got some construction that's about to commence on some of the utilities that are going to go underground. But I'm going to get into the show and tell here right quick, and we'll see if you have any questions. Get the light back there. Next slide. So you recognize this picture. This is the Woodlands. And you recognize Mud 47 in green. The area we're going to talk about is the area in the big red square. That's the pretty much the last developable land in the district. Next slide. It's a close-up of that area. What I wanted to make sure you're looking at more closely is the area, that red circle. That's the area where we've got our first land sale. If you go to the next slide on that. So that used to be about a 12.3 acre tract, all as one tract is how we were looking at it. But the purchaser of the land has purchased 6.3 acres. That's what we're calling 3S2 in this picture. Kind of orient you a little bit more about what's happening on 1488 there. You know where Kirkendall is, you know where Kirkendall ties into 1488. 3R is where there's a big CVS, the CVS pharmacy there. So this facility that that's going to be built is going to be on 3S2, and it's immediately to the west. So water, sewer, and drainage for that parcel exist at the property line with CVS. So we're only going to have to extend our sanitary and water and storm sewer a little ways to the west for this initial phase of construction, which should let us get some actual commercial value on the ground for you guys. Tell you a little bit about that.
And that's already tied into our system, right? I mean.
Oh, yes.
CVS is a commercial property and
yes,
into the system.
certainly is. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about the sale. It happened in late December. A lot of angst on this one because they were west of Buckshot Lane, then they moved east of Buckshot Lane, and we're trying to get the closing before year end to get the revenue stream in, but finally happened. The name of the buyer, and this is, we don't have a public announcement on this yet. This is officially our public announcement because this is a public meeting. So, but there's gonna be some more press on this as we move on down the road. But for the time being, for you guys, Dudley Sports Plaza will be the name of the facility. The owner of, this owner runs a United Athletic Volleyball Center over in Katy, but this will not be a volleyball center. They will have volleyball there. They will have pickleball there. They're also going to have some sports entertainment venue. They'll have like a ski simulator or golf simulators, stuff like that. Some of you guys are familiar with Villa Sports. You know where that is? So they have a cafe and they may actually have a liquor license for beer and wine and stuff like that. They have the opportunity to do all those things here. So it's not a volleyball center per se, but they will have volleyball there. It's going to be a big, big building. I don't have a very good rendering to show you. I wish I could. There will be some renderings coming out in the press. You know, if you want to see them, I'm sure you can get them there. I can get them to you as well. But we're very, very excited about the sale. They're obligated to start construction up there within 12 months. We've already taken bids on the utilities to serve them. And it's going to, instead of having a larger phase, which I'm going to talk about a little bit right now. Next slide. Back in 2021, we came to you guys and talked about everything that needed to be built to serve everything in this E-shaped area, the big area that you have here. And so when we build all those facilities, and then once we have our new, once we have our first certificate of occupancy, y'all are going to start paying us back for those utilities. We're not building all the utilities right now. We're just building some of them. So you won't be hearing from me for anything with the content letter that we agreed to until all the utilities are, all the facilities are in. So next slide. This is any questions on this? This is all three WSMD, how we were going to plan on serving those areas. It's changing a little bit, but it's basically the same.
So the blue was the water. Green is storm, and yellow's the drainage.
Yellow is
It's sewer. Sorry. Waste.
green is storm.
It says tract boundary.
Yeah.
You tell me, I'm doing it wrong.
Green is storm.
Yeah.
Right, it's
There's
under
a
the,
legend over there. Tract boundaries.
and so you sold the property east of Buckshot Lane? Is that-
Half of it. The eastern half that's immediately adjacent to CVS site.
Is access still going to be from 1488? There's no other way to get to it.
There will be access. I don't know if they got to go to the state to get a driveway off of 1488.
Mhm.
But there's we have what's called a reciprocal easement. So the CVS driveway will be extending to the west, all the way to Buckshot.
Because it's really hard to make a left up there.
And you haven't seen anything yet because the state's fixing to redo all of 1488 up there. They're gonna have managed lanes and all kinds of other fun stuff. So that's all coming.
Raised medians.
Raised medians, yeah.
Right.
You know what those things on the sides are? Those half round circle things?
Those are for
That's all
trucks.
they-
Those are for trucks, 18 wheelers. When they need to make a U-turn, they can turn around. That's what those are there for.
I'll be doing.
Next, this is all three. This is gonna get clear on the next three slides. There's the water line. There's the sanitary sewer lines.
Is the
There's,
water line tied into the subdivision to the south?
yes,
It is, okay.
yeah, we plan on bringing it all the way across the creek and making it a loop system.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes me happy.
Makes everybody happy. One of the things that we talked about back in 21 was this triangular piece that you see in the red striped area. That is land that's currently owned by Howard Hughes. It is not in your mud. But we intend to ask you guys to annex it into the mud. And once that happens, and we develop that property, should be worth about another, what was the number, $7 or $8? It's $6 or $7 million worth of AV that's going to be added by that area. You've got to serve that area anyway because the line, your property goes all the way to the west. So it's only in your interest to annex that land that we're going to be developing commercial property on. So that process, we need, Remind me to get started on that process, Brian.
I think this one was the one that you gotta look and see whose ETJ is it.
It's incompetent.
That's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
So does that annexation process match up with, as you get close to developing it, or is that something you want to do sooner rather
I'd
than
rather do
later?
it now. I'd rather do it now. Because it just dropped off my radar because we didn't have anything exciting happening up here for the last year or so. So I'll get with Brian and we'll start putting together the paperwork and everything that has to happen with the entities that have to approve it. Next slide. This was part of our previous presentation, just kind of goes through your historic tax rate. And this is 2 years old. I know you've reduced your tax rate more since then because you've got such an incredible great, great tax base. And these commercial properties are only going to add to your value as we move forward. It should allow you to reduce your tax rate even more. Next slide. Kind of a differentiation of the styles of development up here. This is the south side of the street where the CVS is. That's the north side of the street where another developer developed the property. We're going to be doing the same. We're going to be doing the development here the way we've done development all throughout the Woodlands. It's not an inexpensive way to develop. We're giving away 40 feet of frontage to the trees to try to save all the trees along the 1488 so we can keep our community looking better. And with all those values that we all love so much, the forest. Next slide. Another example of how we do signage and how the people across the street do signage. I prefer the one on the left. Maybe somebody prefers the one on the right so I can see it better, but we prefer the low profile stuff, and we'll be continuing that same approach with this property. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about what's going on, but right now we're going to be expending, I think, around $300,000 or $400,000 to get that initial phase of utilities in. We'll have our first building there that'll be producing assets, but until we have a finished plan and we produce utilities on the entire thing, I won't be coming to you guys for any reimbursement. And that's what's going on 1488.
Any questions for Dan? I know you all have been pondering this a bit and seen some information. Our content. Thanks.
Back in the light.
I don't mind being in the dark sometime, but the content reads a little differently, right? Than maybe what's going forward. It talks about a 50% at occupancy and then another 50% at full value.
Right.
That doesn't seem to make sense right now based on this development plan that you're proposing. So what do we do about that? That doesn't seem to make sense to me, the way it's written.
We have counsel here. So the way I read the content, Ryan says that once the utilities are complete and once we have our first occupancy permit, then we get paid back for the utilities, some of the utilities that we've installed. And since I'm not installing all the utilities, I haven't met the requirements for getting paid back. Is that how you look at it as well?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got to come up with water, sewer, and drainage for all the land and the occupancy permit, and then we start the reimbursement process, but not before that. If we want to add a supplement to this thing, that's fine with me, but I'm content with my understanding of it, and if that's your understanding too, Brian, I think we're probably okay.
So, I mean, that's something, the board can discuss, but if you haven't, if there's not the infrastructure in, then it wouldn't really make sense to do a reimbursement for a really small portion, but that's something that y'all could discuss. But the way it was envisioned, our recollection, been a while, slightly time since then, was that board at the time that approved this, the assumption was that all the infrastructure would go in first, and then the first building would come on, and then additional development. I think we're here now is that assumption is not how it's going to happen in reality, which that's how things go sometimes. Better, it sounds like it makes it better for the district in terms of value earlier on, but the infrastructure that you'll be reimbursing won't be in the ground at the time this first building sounds like will be occupied.
I do have some other information to pass on to you as well. The drainage has become more of an issue than we thought it was gonna be. We've got new resident in town and we have new wetlands rules that have been imposed by this guy. And I think our prices, I think our expenses, the developer's expenses are gonna go up, your expenses won't go up. But we're working hard on how we're gonna solve this drainage problem, which is gonna help us serve the balance of this tract, not the first area to the east. There are two distinct drainage areas here. The area adjacent to CVS drains due east along 1488. And everything pretty much a little ways west of Buckshot drains south. Yeah. So, or I should say Alden Branch. So.
What does that mean materially for you?
Well, it's easy to phase this project. I've got drainage problems for the phase 2 area, but I don't have any problems with the phase 1 area. That's why this land sale can go forward and we can get the first piece of property sold. Hopefully we can get a few more things done off that existing infrastructure. And while we try to figure out exactly how we're going to solve this drainage problem with the rest of it.
Does the original drainage plan still apply?
It does.
With the developments happening in the last 3 years?
Yeah, we still have to provide detention before our property. We have to ensure people downstream that there's a no rise analysis done. County engineer that just recently took over has a new way of looking at drainage in here in Montgomery County as well. So we're going to have to deal with not new rules in Montgomery County, but new interpretations of old. Is the best way for me to say it. So we've got a set of plans that we're gonna have to work hard to get through the system, and we're gonna continue to do that. In the meantime, we're gonna get some AV on the ground here sooner rather than later. That's good.
So the content, that's for the, I wasn't here at the time. That's for that T, the development, sewage and
Water, sewer,
water.
drainage, whatever
Okay.
that entails.
So, trying to get up to speed on this, is this normal where like the bond is taken out for
No.
something that's not? So what happened? Were you here
Yeah.
what happened with all that? Like why take the bond out
Yeah,
for something that could happen like 15 years down the road, right?
I will tell you the developer side of the story. I was frankly kind of shocked by it. The bonds were sold for all your remaining, the total authorization was sold for everything left to do. And in that authorization that you went to TCQ, you said, we're gonna build facilities to serve our remaining undeveloped land in the district and other projects to be determined. And generally, that's the opposite of the way it happens. Generally, a developer will come to a district and say, we're gonna go build this, we're gonna create this AV, we're gonna spend all this infrastructure cash to put water, sewer, and drainage in the ground. And then you'll pay us back as you're financially able to pay us back. And that's what the content essentially does for you. So this one was done differently. One of the main reasons I think it was done differently, I wasn't engaged with the district at the time when this was actually getting going. But I know that they got a tax rate, interest rate on this bond that was nuts, like 1.5%. I think the district's earning two or three times that right now on interest. So it hadn't turned out to be a bad thing for you to have as a bank, but it is backwards. It's the first time I've ever done a project with a district where we didn't go out first and invest all the dollars, and then the district would pay you back based on the AV that was created. This one's backwards, and there's some reasons for that, but I don't know all of them.
Is this the only one that you've seen that's backwards? Or
it's the only one I've
all
done
them
in my career. I'm sure there are others. There's hundreds and hundreds of districts.
But within this area, yeah.
Yeah, in my history, this is the first time I've seen this.
Arthur, were you on Mud 47 when this all happened?
I'm like 47 at the time, kind of back.
With the bond or with, because there's two votes that happened, right? 14H with it.
Okay.
Okay.
My term ran out in November of 20, okay? The content was done after that, but Dane came in September of 20, present the original plan on the development. Let's leave that aside for a minute. Let's talk about the bond. Lot 47 had $6.8 million of authorized ability to sell bonds by the taxpayer. There's a number of projects at the time. One of the bigger projects was the smart meters. We could have paid for the smart meters in cash. We could have used our bond. Plus, we had some flood projects we wanted to take a look at, and 1488 was out there. So we decided at the time as a board and voted to take all of this and package it up, but also take advantage of where the interest rates were going on bonds. When we sold these bonds, the board approved the sale of the bonds based upon financial advice and legal advice. We achieved in February 2020, 1.5% interest rate, 1 month prior to COVID. So it was a good utilization. It may look like it was backwards. We're trying to take advantage of projects we had to do and also what was going on in the market. And I think if you look back historically, we achieved a real low interest rate and we utilized the money for the smart meters, some flood mitigation projects, and for 1488. And we had to go to TCEQ based upon Brian and financial advice, changing the original application for reapplication of what we were going to use the funds as this other project came up. Now, we didn't have full plans on this project. The initial project was presented in September of 20, but we pushed it back to the developer because we felt there was insufficient advice. There wasn't enough financial calculation on what they want to do, what the cost, what the long-term view of the project was. And there was a couple things that the board didn't like. Was it going to be multiple use? Was it going to be apartments? We asked the developer to come back and really fine tune the project. What is this land going to be used? And they came back to the next board and presented more details. But that's kind of a backstory of why we went to the marketplace to execute the bonds. If we didn't have voter authorization, we would not have gone to the marketplace. So a small amount to go to the marketplace if we didn't have prior authorization from the voters.
So is the 1488 money, is it set aside in its own account, just sitting there?
It's in a capital projects account, yes. Bond proceeds have to be kept separate from your general operating proceeds, yes.
So, okay. Is there a timeline when you have to use those proceeds? Like you can't just, can you just go out and do a bond and let it sit in your bank account for years?
You have reasonable expectations at the time that you issue the bonds, but of course, those reasonable expectations got blown up with COVID, as Arthur mentioned. And I went back and looked. That these bonds literally closed. They were my first bond issue that closed after the shutdown. They closed on, I think it was September 20th or so. So we were trying to get stuff to the Attorney General for the closing right when everything was shutting down. So needless to say, reasonable expectations kind of got shot out of the water in terms of, I think, what that board anticipated in terms of timeline. So now, yes, should make every effort to spend those proceeds judiciously, but as soon as reasonably possible. But the reasonable expectations at the time those bonds were issued are, have completely changed.
And COVID threw everything out of kilter, so we had to deal with that. But when we made all those applications to TCEQ, they approved of what we were going to use the money for, and they approved the timeline. And that's what the board voted on, reasonable timelines, based upon advice from legal counsel and financial counsel.
And one thing we are monitoring for a number of district clients, not just this one, is the delta that we are now seeing between earnings on bond proceeds and the interest that's paid on the bonds themselves. So for a long time, it's been really just an academic exercise because what you could earn was not even 1%, fractions of 1%. And even if you were issuing bonds at 2 or 3%, you were earning less than what you were paying out in interest. Well, now with the market having flipped and rates being higher, we are starting to see districts that are earning more interest than what you're having to pay to your bondholders. And the IRS has some very complicated rules for what they call arbitrage and yield restriction. And there have to be reports prepared on a 5-year basis to determine whether or not you're earning excess interest on your bond proceeds over and above what you're paying out to your bondholders. So we've got some district clients where we are suggesting that they have interim reports prepared before that 5-year period so that we don't have districts that think they have more money to spend than what they do, they go spend all the actual bond proceeds plus the interest earnings. And then 2 years down the road, you have your 5-year report prepared. And oh, guess what? You got to pay $300,000 to the IRS that you thought was just earnings that you could spend. We don't want districts in that position. So been visiting with Maureen about this particular district, and we'll probably talk about, maybe 1 or 2 others that we want to see about having interim reports prepared to make sure that that amount is set aside. Right now, it looks like y'all probably, from the time that the bonds were issued until now, about 125,000 more in interest than what you paid. So you basically have a zero interest bond is what you've got. And the remainder would have to go to the IRS, most likely.
So we should figure out how we're gonna be spending some of that.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you to just go find something that is not necessary, but yes, I mean, effort should be made to, be reasonably looking at options for being able to spend, because not all the proceeds were for 1488. There were some drainage projects, as I recall, and this was post Harvey, that I think have not gone forward. So to the extent that maybe some of those projects we can look at.
To Bear Branch, for example, is that an example of a drainage project?
Perhaps.
To look and see what Bear Branch, the initial funding for Bear Branch, because I was involved as the putting the committee together, all the MUDs, was funded by all the MUDs that were involved in it. So MUD 47, the original allocation was over $2 million for Bear Branch. When we brought all 6 MUDs together to relook at this package, we brought the MUD 47 contribution down and we spread it out amongst more MUDs so we could get all the MUDs to agree upon a financial package. And Metro MUD kept their $1 million in the package. But there were a number of flood mitigation projects that were on our list post Harvey. We did some of them, and there were some we probably didn't do. But at the time when all of this was talked about, the bond, it was anticipated we'd use this money within approximately 3 years. And there was no COVID projected and what that would do with development projects and how people worked and when we would ever come back once we were put in a shutdown. As we all know, we really didn't come back till almost September of 21 back in public meetings. So that was never on the horizon.
The bond was voted on. You know what year the bond was voted on? Before 2020?
You're talking about the
Just
authorization.
the authorization of the
It
bond.
was 2019.
Okay, because then the Con 10 was like December of 2020 or something, wasn't it? So
Well, the bonds were issued in 2020, because it was March that I was telling you about. that
during
they
COVID,
closed.
okay,
Correct.
right at the beginning of it.
Correct. So that's when they closed on the bonds. Those bond funds are what is referenced in the content from December of 21. Authorization, I think, came from.
Why does the content happen so much later? Just curious.
Well, as far as in September of 2020, when the developer came forward with the project, right? The board members didn't feel the project was detailed enough, was just put in front of us. We weren't going to look at a project like that. We asked the developer to go back and make some of the recommended changes that the board members, their comments to the initial meeting. And then after that, it took time to put the whole package together. I lost track of it after November of 2020, but I think the next board was very diligent in making sure what came back for the content was proper, that met their requirements at the time. And I think you could see what the content.
So the interest rates were, and like in March, they were that low.
In February, when we voted this to sell the bond in February, closing took in March, they came down to 1.5%. They were just phenomenal.
And at the time, that was your main driver for buying the bond.
Main
Was
driver-
good rates.
Main driver was one, to utilize what the voters authorized for projects that were on the horizon that we would have to pay for, that we didn't want to take out of cash. And one of the main drivers was flood mitigation projects and the pending installation of smart meters. Not just the smart meter, but the full system, smart meter and the Wi-Fi for the port.
So most of the money's been spent except for the 1488 content and the smart meter. There's some remaining. Besides 1488 and the smart meters are still remaining amount.
These guys that have to do the final.
Yeah, I'm asking the wrong person. I'm looking at you, but I know you're the wrong person to ask
Yes.
right now.
recollection's a little hazy, but I thought what ultimately happened was that reserves were used for the smart meters and then the bond proceeds were for 1488 and the drainage projects
The smart meters was a combination of reserves.
proceeds.
Yeah.
There's still, yeah, I mean, there's 6.7
Small part.
plus in your capital projects fund, of which would we say 300?
1.3 are the development.
Correct,
So the 6.7, 4.3's got to be set aside.
correct. Out of that 6.7, yes.
There was a crushed granite walk, like pads, running pads and stuff as a sort of an improvement project a couple years ago. You remember that?
That was
Shadow Bend Park.
Shadow Bend Park, yeah.
Oh, so that money got spent already. There were no other projects beyond Shadow Bend?
Because Shadow Bend, that project was really more of a recreational project.
Yeah.
We don't have bond authorization for recreational, and so that was, I believe, again, it's a little fuzzy, but I thought that was paid out of just general operating funds because you can use your general operating funds
Okay.
for a project
Got
like
it.
that.
And the township maintained that. They probably need to improve that a little bit. The granite's getting a little,
Mhm,
down to the bare. So what,
It gets used a lot.
it's a great play. It's a great amenity.
Yeah.
I was looking at all the files in the folder and like one of the policies we have was 1976 and it was updated in 2020 or 2021 or something like that. At the time of the bond, were we compliant with our policy? I can't read the one from
Yeah,
1976. I don't have it.
Yeah, the only thing we were doing on the update on the content was to update statutory references for, the competitive bidding and how the projects needed to be administered, because the original 76 was just pretty old, but all the development was from inception now has been done with that policy.
I would share.
I think we also updated the time frame on the projects, because what we typically have for our developments now is a 15-year time period for projects to be completed. And back then it was 5 years.
I can tell you, we're very fortunate to have this type of advice. The board didn't do anything without legal and financial advice in order to execute all of that and based upon our policies. But we as an overall district, we're very fortunate with the level of advice that we have to keep us on a straight and narrow and keep us doing the good things that we do.
I think, my interest is, what's happened has happened. What we do going forward is really the issue, I think. And what do these funds are sitting there, they're paying loans. I did notice, I think on one of the reports here that comes out of the finance group is that here it is on page 10, that the 2020 series, which shows the final maturity of 2029. So it's a 10-year bond, looks like, which is, most of them, I guess, are longer than that, but maybe 10 years normal, but it shows a balance of 7.3 million.
Typical is, I'll tell you, typical is around 25-year structures.
Okay.
Now, the board at the time, when they wanted to go with the remaining authorization, they made it clear that they wanted to shorten it as much as possible without negatively impacting the tax rate. So we shortened it from a 25-year to a 9-year structure, and that's why.
To not extend out the debt responsibilities of future taxpayers.
Right.
To keep it shorter so that you're not extending out that debt period. And what ended up happening was that it also got a much more attractive rate by having a shorter period.
It's like a 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year, you get a little break on the mortgage rate. So, okay. So you went for a 9-year,
Structure, if you'd like to see it.
yeah, and then, so why do we have a $7.3 million balance on a $6.3 million bond that we did
The principal
3 years ago?
pushed out so that we didn't increase the overall tax rate.
And you did an interest only portion and then a
Yeah,
principal?
we just wrapped it around the existing debt.
I know you know what that means, but I don't.
So basically you have your outstanding debt, your principal and interest that you're owed on previous bonds, right?
The other series.
And
we have.
yeah, and so what we did was we took the principal and pushed it onto the back end of the structure. So your debt service stays flat. You always want your tax rate flat or descending on your debt side because we don't want to show an increase in your overall debt service. If that makes sense.
Okay, I mean, I hear what you're saying. So all the debt prior to that was maturing in 2024, correct?
Correct.
I mean, that's what our little table shows here.
Correct.
And we're pretty much about to pay it all off within
Right.
3, 4, 5 years. In 2020, you take this new tranche out for 6.8 or something. You pushed out the debt, I'm sorry, the principal piece out to start in 2024, kind of when the other was going to fall off.
Right.
So you had an interest only stub, and then you grossed up the principal to be starting to pay. And so the payments now from 2024 to this year to 2029. So that 5 year, we'll pay off all the principal plus
5 through 29. You pay off
through
all the
in 5 years.
Right.
We'll basically pay now all that principal and interest. Okay. And that was done because I know you just said, I just don't understand
so-
it. Sorry.
No, not at all. So I guess the easiest way that I can think of to explain it is this is your outstanding principal and interest.
Right.
And so that's what you're paying on an annual basis. And so say it takes 8 cents of your overall tax rate to cover this outstanding debt. What we did not want to happen is to sell 25-year debt starting up here, and now you need 10 cents because you're already strained on your maintenance and operations side of your overall tax rate. So what we did was we pushed it onto the back end, tacked it on here, the majority of all the principal for that matter.
Mhm.
And so what it means is you get to keep your 8 cents. You just pay 8 cents of debt service a little bit longer into the future. So it just keeps your tax rate on your debt side flat because we didn't want to show an increase because otherwise you either increase your overall tax rate or you take it from maintenance and operations.
What I saw was, instead of the debt going out another 15 years beyond this, you were able to drop your tax rate from about 12 cents to 6 cents at that point. At least that's what you did, was it looks like, or is planned to. When the principal pops in, that's when the old debt was dropping off. And instead of going from 12 to 0 and then selling bonds in the future, and I guess raising your rate in sometime down the future to pay off this, which I don't even know how you go from 12 to 0 back to whatever you need. How would you do that?
You're just increasing your overall tax rate.
Yeah, right.
You're not subject to rollback.
You're not subject to rollback.
Correct, not on debt service,
Not on
just
debt
on
service.
M&O.
Okay.
So effectively just extended it out 5 years.
Yep.
And avoided all that.
Yep.
So, go ahead. No, go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, it just concerns me that, I hope we're compliant with the IRS and, I mean, you take out a bond in 2020, it's 2024 and I mean, it's a ways down the pike,
Not the,
It's a
not the
concern of
scenario you
mine.
want, not the scenario you want. But I think, certainly what happened from the time the bonds were sold through COVID upset what the reasonable expectations were at the time the bonds were issued. Now it's trying to move as judiciously as you can on projects that would be able to be used for, that you can use these funds on. And then us also monitoring through arbitrage compliance specialists, your interest earnings to try to have those segregated out or subbed out of your capital projects funds. So you don't think you have those funds to spend.
Did the audit just look at that? I mean, is that part of our audit?
No. No.
Really?
No, that's a separate report that a company called Arbitrage Compliance Specialist does it nationwide for tax exempt issuers. And like I said, those are on 5-year schedules, but we are looking at try to have some interim reports prepared for districts that could be.
That'd be a really good idea. Okay, okay.
And what are the prospects for Howard Hughes selling more of the lot?
Very good. It's all gonna be sold. And my personal experience has been once you have the first person buy a piece of land up there, the next 2 or 3 become much easier to sell. So.
So when you're putting the infrastructure in, I assume you're building it not piecemeal, but all together on the assumption that those lots will get snatched up.
We've divided this project into 2 phases. The first phase goes to the watershed that goes down 1488. The second phase will be the balance of the project.
Okay. And no apartment complex?
Nothing that I'm aware of. I never ever say never, but I can't, but there are no plans for an apartment complex there.
I'm concerned about the flooding, and I'm glad that you're dealing with
Right.
the mitigation. So that's something,
Sure.
Those residents on the back end is really on my mind. Sure.
There are a lot of rules we have to follow, and the plants have to go through not just my engineer, but the county's engineer also takes a look at it, and everybody gets on board before we get an approved set of
And
plans.
he's the new guy, right?
Yeah,
County.
Dan Walls is the new county engineer.
And the impression I got is that his interpretation is different than the than the
I
prior.
heard that today, and I passed it on to you because one of my engineers is working on another project in the county.
Yes.
Dan has either he has a guy working for him as a consultant that is doing things differently. That's the best way for me to put it. I'm not gonna say unorthodox or any of the other words that maybe are thrown out with that, but what it ends up meaning is what it was told to me is it's a little more conservative, which is okay with us.
I've heard that also from a person that used to hold that office.
I wonder who that might be.
Oh, right. Yeah, brothers.
And then there was one in between, and then he just retired. Second guy, and now Dan Wild stepped up. Dan Wild's been there a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's been with the county for a long, long time. I trust him. I know him.
So we don't have to go through it tonight. I think that I have some pain with the content that just doesn't reflect what we're doing forward. And I think to reset, I think that makes some sense. Because it's really not clear. I don't like what it says about the 50% and the occupancy plus the full completion and conveyance. You're not going to do it that way. So I think now that we have a little better line of sight, we can reset and maybe look at it a little differently. That would be something I think I would be willing to pursue going forward. I mean, work with you guys, Brian, and figure out how to do that and bring it back here for an amendment if we need to. Okay. Any other questions for Dan or Adam or
Thank you, guys.
anyone else? Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you staying late. Well, we're gonna make this the longest meeting we've ever had. I know you all are dying over here, so let's just roll through. 23, that's what we're going for. We're gonna stay here until it's 23 degrees. Okay, trustees report. I think we covered most all of it, actually. Fast, we discussed it thoroughly. Do we need to?
No, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. 25. We don't need to reconvene. There's no one here from the public. In fact, everyone should be going to bed. Yes.
S&P does, from time to time, does surveillance on outstanding debt. And so middle of December, they came with a ton of questions.
Okay.
I have affirmed the district's underlying credit rating is a AA minus. So there are very few districts that exist with a AA credit. So it's a really positive thing. And so that's the report that they provided.
Can you drop that somewhere we can take a look at it? That's really good news. Yeah. So we can go borrow money in the future with really good credit rates.
With some bond
Double A minus, let's go. Well, I know, no, but you know, we have good credit. That's what I'm hearing. That's good. All right, because it's run well. Good. Okay. No comments from the public now, and discuss matters on future agenda.
Summon letter.
Are you gonna give us copies of that?
I
Review?
gave you all copies.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so we'll look at this and
Yep.
discuss next time. You want to
Okay.
do, or offline with you? We can send you comments.
Yeah, offline with.
Maybe
you.
we can approve it next month
Yep.
for February.
John.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's good.
actually, because John and I've been working on this and we're putting pictures in it because it's easier for people to read and easy language because a lot of people speak Spanish and we didn't really want to go down the path of a whole bilingual, newsletter and stuff. But we think if people start reading this and we get a lot of positive feedback, we can then start like making it quarterly
Yeah,
and
yeah.
taking certain issues in that. So I just kind
Yeah.
of flushed this down
Thank you
to
very
a
much.
lot of my neighbors and that, and they're like, this is so boring.
Yeah.
Because they don't really know what we do. And so to be able to talk about it, and we're pushing the MUD director elections, so we kind of do need to get it published before that becomes
Okay.
an issue.
All right. Got it. Thank you very much for doing that. We'll get back to you ASAP.
Yep, you have my email address, just send that, and then I'll just, any
Can you send it
changes.
electronically so I can mark it up
I
electronically?
can do that. I can do
That makes, okay. I think that's it. We're adjourned.